Okay, wow. I'm so excited for the conversation that we are about to have with Alan Steinfeld, author. You are the host of New Realities, which is a 20-year-long show running on Manhattan Cable.
Yes, it is.
And you are a seeker of wisdom and truth.
I try to be, yes.
My guy.
Yes.
So excited to talk to you. You have a book called Making Contact, which has been described as the most well-rounded attempt, because we can't know everything yet, but I think we will eventually at some point. Well-rounded view of what we know about aliens and UFOs.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes, I'm so excited you're here. The intro to your book. I was driving my car listening to it on Audible, and I had to pull over so many times to write the quotes down because I was so captivated by them. I'm so passionate about aliens. I'm not exactly sure why.
Right.
I'm like, maybe it's because I was one, or I want to get abducted so bad.
Maybe you were, yeah.
God, I hope so. I checked my body for marks. I'm like, did they do it? But you have this quote: even if the information you are about to hear defies everything you know, take a chance to venture into the unexplored by giving yourself the freedom to enlarge the context of your thoughts.
Exactly.
I love that.
That's all I'm asking people to do.
Yeah.
There's something out there, right? I mean, the government has acknowledged, yes, there's something there.
Right.
What it is, that's why I have all these different opinions in the book. It's a collection of 11 different essays, and everyone has their own little piece of the elephant. So what's going on? We have to put it together. No one's going to tell us for sure what's going on.
Right.
But we have the capacity to know. That's my belief.
Yes, and this book really dives into what the implications are of this knowledge that we do have. One of the things that I always was curious about was, why would a government keep this from people? And I know that it's been said, kind of publicly by the government, it would create mass hysteria and kind of shaking what people believe is not good for a society, which I understand. But really, it seems like there's this one quote I wrote down, but basically the acquisition, it was the Nick Pope chapter.
Yeah.
The acquisition of new technology that is at the root of the government secrecy. The nation on Earth that first acquires this technology will likely be the dominant force on this planet for the foreseeable future, militarily, politically, and economically. I'm like, it's always about power.
I think it's also about money. Obviously, these UFOs are not filling up their gas tank to get here, right?
Yeah,
They're
right.
using a different energy source. And when that becomes known, the fossil fuel companies, all that are out of business. So the government, corporate control, it's not so much about aliens, because that's just a cover story. Yeah, mass hysteria. Maybe it would be, but
The things that we've dealt with, like 9/11, we dealt with that.
Right.
We can deal with aliens.
I think we can. So that's like, they're telling us that because they're hiding, my feeling, this stuff about money, control, economies, all that, because the guys on top want to keep it on top.
Right.
So it's really a manipulation of consciousness, keeping us dumb, keeping us afraid, keeping us in the dark, and
Keeping us controlled.
Yeah.
Maybe we could start off, Alan. Well, first of all, it's good to see you again.
Hey,
We've known each other
Daniel.
for many years. I think we met at Alex Gray's place.
we did.
In 89 or
Yeah.
90. When do we mean? Not that
Well,
long.
we're just always meeting each other in the East Village,
Yeah.
too. Running
Ooh, East Village in 89.
No, it wasn't 89. That was like
Yeah.
99 probably.
Ooh,
99.
still, great decade.
Yeah.
Or 2000.
I've been around there since the 80s, though.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, tell me.
And it's great to see that you've
Thanks.
come forth with the book.
Well, I was obsessed with, like you.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with the subject because I think I had an incident. I told you about it. It's in the book, Chapter 7. And what's going on? How come no one's talking about that? How come this isn't on the front page of every paper? Why is it being kept secret? Maybe they don't want to scare people, but I think
I smell bullshit with that reasoning.
it's a manipulation of reality. It's like the church, telling Galileo, don't tell people the earth is not the center of creation. What are they going to think? What about God?
I thought it might be nice just to go back,
Yeah.
since you know so much about the phenomenon, to go a little bit through the history of it.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess there's been all these different waves of sightings and contacts and so on. I mean, I was looking in one of the essays, they were even talking about being in the 19th century or the early 20th century.
It goes back, some people say, to the last years of the 1890s, 1880s. There were sightings.
But then there were wooden ships back then.
They were wooden ships, but maybe that is part of their projection of what would be flying in the sky. It was before there were metal ships, so people project what they know onto what they don't know. So
Very
maybe people were seeing things in the sky and overlaying with, oh, well, it's a ship. It has to be wooden ship. So I don't know for sure, but I think the phenomenon really hasn't changed that much. People are still seeing now what they saw in the 1890s.
Because that's not what one of the articles has a different perspective.
I know. Grant Cameron has. Yeah. I mean, I don't agree with everyone. Grant Cameron says, no, the technology changes as we mature. I'm not sure about this because I've also read Jacques Vallée. He wrote a book called Wonders in the Sky. He describes the same kind of craft that people are seeing now, these cigar-shaped. I mean, so those are two different perspectives. Yeah, maybe the phenomenon is changing as we evolve, or maybe we're evolving and projecting a change in the phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
But even the types of beings, when people encounter the beings, they've also changed a lot over time.
Well, if you go back to like the 50s, people were from Venus and Mars. Now in the 70s and 80s, now they're from Zeta Reticuli. And so it's our perception that's changing. I don't know if the beings themselves are changing. It comes down, we have a distinction between objective and subjective, and the UFO phenomena is merging those two things because sometimes they get inside your head. Mm-hmm. Like I was looking at an object, I said, that's a strange object. And they saw a little blue light come out of it. It was actually outside of New York. And I said, did I see a blue light? And then it did it again. There's some type of internal mechanism. I can't explain how they do that, but other people reported things like they think it and then it shows up. Like even in the crop circles, you remember those stories, like people had an idea.
I wrote a lot about the crop circles. I spent like 2 years. Yeah.
So people thought, oh, let's think of this design, and sometimes that design shows up. There's this interface between consciousness and this phenomena that we don't understand because we think consciousness, all consciousness. And when I interviewed Deepak Chopra, he says, oh, it's all consciousness. What's the big deal about UFOs? I said, no, Deepak, what's the application of consciousness? How do we use it to send and receive thoughts, to pick up other things? It's more than just a space of awareness.
Right.
It's an application we can use.
Yeah, and we're so glued to our 5 senses.
And
This is all beyond that, really.
But I think the ETs are using a form of quantum awareness because when you get into quantum physics, which is what Lou Elizondo, who was a government insider, who was looking at UFOs for the government, and he said, wow, there's something going on here. How come people don't know about it? He left that and started to become like a whistleblower on this. He says this phenomenon is really about quantum physics. We need another way of knowing the world. And quantum physics gives us this subjective-object relationship, understanding about how the world really is. Mm-hmm. So even, I know I'm throwing out a lot of names, Donald Hoffman said space and time are doomed because they're just our projections of reality. So the whole UFO thing really shakes up our understanding of what reality is, what the mind is, what we are. Are we infinite beings? Are we equal to these who's ever out there? And I'm not claiming I know who's out there.
Right.
But,
So I'm just curious a little bit about the history of the whole thing.
Oh, where do you want to? So 1890s, there was something called the Great Airship Phenomena that people saw mostly on the West Coast in Sacramento, a little bit in Northern Europe. And then it kind of died down.
Just in the U.S., not in other countries?
In the U.S. and Northern Europe. And then it died down a little bit, and then you get this whole influx in 1947. Although you get the War of the Worlds in it was Orson Welles' War of the Worlds was kind of freaked people out. I think that was around 1938.
Yeah.
But you get the main...
was he riffing off of things that were already going on? Like, were there already these reports similar to that?
There were some reports that had been going on through the...
You know about War of the Worlds, right? The Orson Welles thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
That was H.G. Wells's book, War of the Worlds. So he updated it to take place in New Jersey. So that kind of tipped people off. But it wasn't until 1947 that we get the Roswell crash. We get Kenneth Arnold seeing these ships over Mount Rainier. He said there were 9 saucer-shaped looking craft skipping over the air, and he's called them flying saucers. Mm-hmm. That became the key word. A week later, we get a Roswell crash where it says flying saucers crash at a ranch in Roswell. And that just kicks off the whole craze. So it never stopped from 1947, July, till now. I mean, there were spurts, and then there was 1952. There were these lights over the White House and the Capitol building. There's a Life magazine cover,
right?
Photo and cover of a Life magazine article, and Truman came out and said, "Yeah, there's things that we don't know," and then it goes back into secrecy again. You get Project Blue Book saying, "Oh, there's really nothing out there." You get the Condon report saying, "Oh, we've looked into all this and we can't prove there's aliens." And they're still saying this now. You get the preliminary, I'm skipping a little bit, but June 21st, 2021, the preliminary assessment on UAPs, and I'll tell you why they go from from UFOs to UAPs, but they say, "Oh, there's a lot of things out there. We'll put them in the category of other." Mm-hmm. That's all they can come up with. It's a title, other. It's like, come on, be a little creative. So they're calling these things unexplained aerial phenomena. We went from UFOs, unidentified flying objects, to phenomena because somewhere in the government they're hinting this is not really objects. This is a phenomena that affects human beings. There's a lot of people who have neurological problems. It could be positive and negative aspects to seeing a UFO.
Oh.
Yeah. People come down with
what?
radiation. Like in the movie Close Encounters, he gets like this radiation burn, Richard Dreyfuss. And other people have had miraculous healings encounters with UFOs.
Or develop psychic abilities.
Definitely psychic ability.
And that's why I want to be abducted, because give me all those powers.
Rudy Shield, who's a professor at Harvard, said there's something about the light of these UFOs that activates different parts of the brain. And this is also the work of Gary Nolan at Stanford. There's parts of the brain that somehow are different in UFO experiencers and remote viewers.
Oh, very
Gary
interesting.
Nolan is a very key character in uncovering what's really going on here.
And you've had an experience.
Yes, but let me just say, is that enough of a history? I mean, there's
I guess also, I guess I was curious also because it seems like it did kind of evolve and change over time. Like at first, people would sort of see the little beings in like silver outfits from a distance in the 50s. And then it became more like the gray. Then there was like the kind of Nordics. People see a lot of like human, like beautiful, blonde-haired, tall
Hot
humans.
aliens?
Hot aliens.
Whoa, hot babe
Well, there's
aliens?
always been a split in the UFO community between abductees and contactees. You know, there's the ones that are freaked out. In the 50s, you get a guy named George Adamski saying, "Oh, yeah, they're beautiful. They want to take us to Venus." I mean, Adamski.
See the one who took the famous photograph of the saucer?
Yeah, in the 50s. Yeah, that's Adamski.
But actually, it looks like a saucer like this. Almost.
Yes. I mean, I think Adamski was real. There's another guy named George Van Tassel who built this thing in the desert, the Integratron. Have you been out there, Josh?
I love the Integratron.
Yeah.
In fact, we took some
Integratron.
photographs that were like, had like strange kind of like astral kind of objects around it.
Well, he built that because he met an ET who said, "I want you to build this time machine," and there was no metal in the building. He put it all together, and right before he was going to activate it, he died mysteriously.
Oh.
And all his his papers were missing. My friend Jonathan Berman did a film about that called "Calling All Earthlings."
Died mysteriously.
Yes, died mysteriously.
In your opinion, do you think
Yes,
there's...
I would.
Yeah, okay. So
He was, yeah. So,
lights out, baby.
But this is a coveted secret for some reason. I don't know. I think it's hard to say, but maybe the government is being controlled by aliens. I don't know. It's so far out.
Well, they're doing a shit job at it.
I don't know what's going on. That's why I wrote this book from 12 different opinions. What's really going on? And you know what? Nobody really knows what's going on.
I have a friend who was a showrunner on a big History Channel show, I think, on the alien stuff. And so they interviewed a lot of people in the sort of, intelligence worlds. Mm-hmm. And he said that, he was a skeptic when he started the research. But he said it was clear that something was going on. And it seemed that there were, like, different factions in the sort of deep state world or whatever who knew different things. And some of them wanted to keep it hidden, and others wanted to like expose certain parts of it. Yeah. So it seems like a very murky, ambiguous.
This guy
situation.
Admiral Wilson. Have you heard of the Wilson Papers? The Wilson Papers. This Admiral Wilson was told certain things that the government had these inside secrets, and he wanted to find out who was in control. They wouldn't tell him. He's an admiral.
Right.
There's this whole thing that's coming out now that the Air Force is not going along with the laws that they have to come forward and tell people. So the Air Force is like a renegade organization that is doing their own thing because I don't know. I mean, there's
no disclosure.
They're holding back disclosure. There's this fight between the Navy pilots and the Air Force pilots who see the same thing. The Navy pilots report it, and the Air Force doesn't. Ross Cotillier's, this Australian researcher, said, yes, the Air Force, I don't know how he knew, seems to be keeping those secrets for since 1947. So there's an inner struggle in the government to hold this truth back.
Right.
And there's other people saying, no, let's put it all out on the table and figure out what's going on. They're like Bob Lazar. Did you see Bob Lazar on Joe Rogan?
I saw a bit of that, and I saw the Netflix documentary.
Bob Lazar says he worked at Area 51 trying to reverse engineer these technologies that he said produce anti-gravity.
Right.
And I tend to believe him. I think, there's something happening at Area 51.
I think I just yesterday read a piece debunking him and saying that, actually he didn't have much of a science background. He would not have had security clearance, that he must be.
I know.
But that also feels like there's something about the phenomenon that wants to remain murky. And that's what I kind of like. The guy that you said you had issues with, what was his name? Cameron?
Oh, yeah, Grant Cameron.
I kind of agreed with his perspective in some ways because it's like, it feels like it's almost like, it's a phenomenon that kind of plays with us.
It does play with us. That's because it deals with our consciousness.
Right.
And it only reveals itself when it's ready to reveal itself. That I do believe with. I believe that it somehow knows our mind and gives us a little bit. It appears, it disappears. I mean, Terence McKenna had an incredible sighting. You know that one? Where it goes from a cloud.
Right.
To a ship.
But it turned into exactly the same image that was from the
Adamski photo.
Adamski photo, which was like this. Basically, it looked like a photo.
And
it was like the other was just playing games with him. Basically,
That's fun.
Yeah.
It does play games with your mind. That is what Grant Cameron says. It's a reflection of consciousness. It only shows as much as we're willing to deal with.
Right.
So there's so much about this that is hidden.
If Christina wants to get abducted, what does she have to do? What does she have to do?
Well, you can
Give
hang
us
out with
advice.
me. We'll go out to the desert.
Yeah. All right, done. I'm in.
We'll do a little CE5, call the ships in, which really does work. If you meditate and you're in a nice place with not much light, things pop up in the sky. They appear.
They're all the communication, or so much of the communication that has been documented by people who've claimed to have communicated or been abducted, is all telepathic.
It is. And if you're putting out love, we're ready, come.
Yeah, that's why I say every night. I'm like, if you want to take me and do experiments,
people have
I'm
been
your
taken
girl.
from New York. There's a famous
that
case.
used to happen. And that's another thing. It's like Bud Hopkins wrote that book, Missing Time, and somebody was like, pulled off the Brooklyn Bridge. Or
Yes,
like that,
pulled out of their window from downtown Manhattan. People on the Brooklyn Bridge saw this woman floating in the air.
Multiple people.
Yes, multiple people.
Any
One was
pictures?
even connected. No, there was no pictures to the UN.
They didn't have
supposedly.
smartphones back then, I guess.
Damn.
But it used to happen in New York. But I think abductions actually are down. I think they've kind of, and I have a whole theory about why.
Like crop circles are down.
Yes, they are down.
Wait, why? What's your theory?
Well, about abductions, I'm not sure about crop circles. I think they were building to 2012. After 2012, it kind of fell off a little bit. There was a kind of peak of energy.
Yeah.
But the abduction thing is down because I think they got the genetic information to create these hybrid beings. Like in my abduction, after a couple of months later, I was handed this little creature. And I said, I was woken up in the middle of the night after I was abducted in 1987. In 88, I got woken up by this tickle on the inside of my thigh. And I put this little being in my hand.
No way! Keep going.
And I say, what is this? This is weird. I had no emotional connection to this. It looked like an animal. It looked like
Was it cute? Did you think it was cute, or were you just curious?
It looked like a deer with big eyes. I mean, of course, there's
cute.
this overlay of screen memory. So they hand this to me, and it's like, okay. And
who's they?
That's the thing. I woke up. I didn't really see these beings, but I do remember this little being. I know it sounds weird. Even I can't believe it. But put it in my hand.
I'm into it.
They put it in my hand, and I said, this is weird. I said that to myself, and then they took it away. So
I was just like, you woke up. It was like a dream or something.
It could have been a dream, but you forget your dreams in the morning. This is 88. I've never forgotten this dream. And,
It's as old as me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was born in 88.
And I think, oh, right, you could have been that little
Ah,
E.T.
maybe
child.
it's you. Maybe
Yeah.
that
It
makes
did
Maybe
have
I'm a
sense.
little baby deer with big ass eyes.
Well, you do have big eyes.
I do, and
There
they're
you go.
green. Like
there you go.
aliens are in
So,
pop culture.
No one, this is my contention with the whole subject. No one knows what's going on.
Right.
Okay, but we get that. So we're starting from that
Yeah,
agreement
we're
on
starting
that.
from that. Yeah, good.
But I mean, but on the other hand, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it does seem like, well, one question is
Yeah.
like, is it a benevolent or an ambiguous or malevolent
Well,
thing
what-
in its relationship to humans?
Well, we're not talking about one race. This is pretty much what my research shows. There's many, many races experimenting with this little petri dish that we are, this little isolated. Let's program to say, oh, they're the only people in the universe, beings in the universe. So we are so overlaid. Terence McKenna says, culture is not your friend. Culture makes us think we're all alone. Darwinian evolution is chance mutation, and boom, this life appeared. No, I think life is an emergent property of creation. I think there's an abundance of life out there.
There has to be statistically.
I think so.
The
right.
amount of galaxies that exist.
And the amount of, there's nothing here that's not on other parts of the cosmos. This
Right.
is
But you
not-
do have like weird things like the whole Fermi paradox. I mean, like we haven't really encountered anything.
Well,
even though we've been looking for quite a while now.
But we have. What are these UFO videos that are keeping, under lock and key from the? We've seen it, but
Yeah.
the government is in the business of controlling your reality.
I mean, I always enjoy playing
your
devil's
body.
advocate.
No, it's
I've had
okay.
my own experiences
Yeah,
that
but
suggest
the-
there's something. But I mean, even though there's lots of different like videos
Mm-hmm.
and images, they're all kind of a little bit like trashy. Like there's nothing
They
that's
are.
Like, why
that's
is that
like-
one video
yeah.
of the aliens pixelated?
Yeah, it's like you never see like the thing. Like okay,
I
like
know.
that's
4K.
totally clear, and I get it, and here they are.
Maybe making contact's an inside job. Maybe it comes from the inner to the outer. This is my guess. Yeah, I know. It's true. There's
Yeah.
no like, okay, the aliens here, here's the bodies, here's
I
the
wish.
ships.
Yeah.
And something is controlling our reality. It's what Timothy Leary used to say about LSD. It's not that LSD was harmful. It's just that you don't want people to think differently by taking these drugs. It's so...
Well, now people are taking the drugs all the time. It doesn't seem to make a difference.
I know, but they're keeping the ET stuff behind, bars so no one can shift their reality too drastically.
Yeah, maybe it's more complicated than just there being a they that's doing something.
Yeah, I think that might
I
be
think
true.
they might be really confused.
Well, the phenomenon itself isn't ready to reveal, I think. So they're working in conjunction in a way, opposed to the government and with the government. Are we ready to meet the other on an even playing field?
Yes.
You are. But what about all those people drinking beer and watching the football game?
Strap in, losers. Yeah, to put down your football jersey. There's bigger shit to fry.
But we're living in a collective field.
I know.
And
It's a
so
bummer because there's a lot of low vibrating
we
people
have
that
to-
are just so sucked into like greed and anger and stress and like everyone's
And
against
that's their
me.
life, and that's all they
Yes.
know, and
Right,
they
it's a
could
lot
care
of
less
people.
about UFOs or whatever's out there.
Right. So wait, I want to
Yeah, okay.
real quick. I want to talk about your abduction
Okay.
experience, and then you mentioned really quick, Daniel, that you've had experiences where you're like, okay, something's else out there. I would love to also get to your what experience that was most palpable to you after that.
So I'm driving cross country with a girlfriend in 1987. We're going from the West Coast to the East Coast. We started on 80. We go down from Oregon. It was at the Oregon Country Fair, and then we hit 80, and we're traveling 80 east, and we are driving for 12 hours. We're tired. We pull off the road down this little deserted dirt road. It says enter at your own risk, and I said, oh, that's interesting. I think it was because the canals flood in it's western
You hadn't
Nebraska.
seen that film before?
Which one?
Enter at your own risk. Oh, we'll just go in there, of course.
It was 87. No, I did, because we just were so tired. We just wanted to get off the road. So we just, we usually fool around, roll around, do whatever. But we're just so tired, we just pass out. And in the morning, like I said
You didn't
before,
fool around.
we just passed out because we were really tired.
Sometimes you're too tired to do it, Daniel.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're driving
Been
all
there.
day and,
True.
doing whatever we're doing while we're driving. But
Ooh.
but we just kind of fall asleep. And I got the feeling before I went to sleep, oh, man, I should turn this van around. Like, for some reason, I just got that thought. But I said,
This was
nah.
like you had like a hippie van?
Yeah, I had a hippie van in
With
the
like
80s.
mattresses
scuba
in the
Yes,
back,
I
like
love
boutique fabrics.
Hell
Yes,
yeah.
that was my vision in the early 80s. I wanted to get a hippie van and travel
By the way,
across
Alan
country.
has a wonderful sort of gem of a tiny East Village apartment.
Yes.
It's like one of the originals with like a bathtub in the center
It
of the
was
room.
in the New York Post, my bathtub in the kitchen. I've only been that since the early
We should actually
days.
film in his bathtub.
We
You
should.
should.
We
Yes.
should.
I thought about
We
that too late.
will.
I bring someone up to my apartment, a little side story. She says, "Oh, this is your starter apartment." I said, "What does that mean?" She says, graduate college, you get a small apartment in New York, and then you move on. I said, "Yeah, I'm still in my starter apartment 30 years later." So anyway.
You and with your aliens.
With my aliens.
It's very sweet, actually.
Thank you. So we're driving across country. We pass out. I didn't feel like turning the van around. I don't know why I got this thing. But anyway, pass out. We wake up in the morning, and we're in the same position that we fell asleep in. And who remembers those things? Like,
Right.
how do you... And I just...
Although you usually don't wake up like, oh,
Yeah,
you usually wake up just like your face.
You
is
wake
half
up,
on
you
the other
move around,
person.
but for some reason, and I called her when I was writing this book. I said, "You remember that time we were driving across country?" So yeah, the time we were frozen. It was like suspended animation. So something happened. I didn't know what it was. I get back to New York, and my mother's. It was July. She says, "What's that mark on the back of your leg?" And it was a 4-pronged puncture. Who looks at the back of their knee? When's the last time you've seen it? So
been a
I
minute.
didn't see it right away. So my mother, because I think also, it's interesting she saw it, because I think I come from a family of abductees. My mother and my grandmother.
Have stories.
They have sort of stories. They were lost in the mountains of Tucson in 1947, the summer of Roswell. My mother never lived outside of New York except for 1947 for her asthma when she was a child. So
The 1 year that
the
the Roswell
one
crash
year
happened.
that it happened. So anyway, I start to meet these people who are connected to Bud Hopkins, and I ask one of them, "Hey, have you seen a mark like this?" And I didn't expect any. And they say, "Yeah, that's an abduction mark." And I freaked out. It's like, I don't remember it. And it's like...
But you did remember something was off.
I did remember something. I woke up in the morning and I said, "Did something happen?" I go, "Nah."
Yeah.
It's like, so anyway, I met Bud Hopkins, and I was welcomed into the Intruder Foundation. I went to a bunch of parties and started to go deeper and deeper. I was so obsessed with it. I'm still obsessed with it. I go to every single conference. I have probably 500 books on the subject. I've met that's how I was able to write this book. I called Linda Moulton Howe up, who, you go to enough conferences, you go to dinner, you have lunch, and you become friends. So I called everyone personally, say, "Write a chapter in this book. Do you mind?" And they said, "Sure." And anyway, so I just get upset, but I don't get regressed until like 20 years later, because I don't want to know what really happened. And when I finally was regressed, I saw these beings kind of open up the back of the van door with this bright light and kind of float us out. But I didn't get all of it because I didn't go deeper. But I did see these beings, but they weren't little grays. They looked like these beings with big heads and just eyes. All I saw was the eye. I didn't see a nose or a mouth. So it's not as dramatic as other people's stories. I mean, I think I saw things at the window growing up. I always felt a little different. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was young. Maybe you did too, Daniel. No, probably didn't. Okay. I was obsessed with the stars. I said, "What are those things out there? Why is no one looking up at the sky?" And I wrote a poem about the stars when I was 7 years old. It's like, how come I'm the only one? And someone said, "Don't pay attention to it. It doesn't mean anything." It's like,
that's how as you grow older, this stuff gets knocked out of
But
you.
Star Trek in the late 60s, I was obsessed with it. I had to watch. I had to stop eating dinner, go. I was just obsessed. And science fiction. I was a science fiction buff in sixth grade. My sixth grade teacher said, "You can't read any more science fiction. It's ruining you."
Jeez.
I know. I mean, that was awful. That was horrible.
Oh my God.
And I would read about these parallel dimensions. So I was obsessed with a different perspective on reality, And then it was interesting.
Same.
I never felt like a part of my family. If you talk if you talk to people who would call themselves starseeds, they always feel a little different. My brothers, nice people, very normal. They have businesses and families, and me, I've always felt like an outsider. Maybe that's just my Aquarian personality, but I don't know. That's sort of like gets back to like that abduction experience. So yeah, and then I was given this little creature about a year later to kind of bond with, they say.
Just in that
And
moment?
that you remember, not in the
No.
Regression.
That I remembered before the regression. Yeah, that's right. And that was like, I mean, I remember it the next morning. I didn't think I dreamt it, but that was so weird.
Right.
I mean, it's weird to even say that happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, but why would it be a memory in your brain?
Right. And why do I still remember it? Like, I don't remember.
Do you remember what the thing felt like? Did it weigh?
It felt like a little baby deer. I mean, it looked like that and felt like, I don't remember what it, and I remember they put it in my hand.
Flashing on Eraserhead, the baby from Eraserhead.
Yeah, maybe it was the Eraserhead baby. I think that was a goat's head. But I don't know. There's a lot of strange memories. What else? I mean, I've had other strange dream-type memories. And
But obviously, you've just meant, and talking to a lot of people who had a lot more significant. Like,
yeah, a lot. This was very
abductions.
normal abduction type thing, if there is such a thing. But
Right.
it did get me down the rabbit hole. That's what they say. It was, and then the only reason I was regressed because I heard James Pennison talk at a UFO hearing, and he was in the Rendlesham Forest.
Who was that?
Jim Penniston. Rendlesham Forest, 1980 UFO lands in the Rendlesham Forest in England. He touches the craft.
Oh, wow.
And he gets this series of zeros and ones going through his head. And he was at this Stephen Bassett hearing where UFO witnesses would talk to former members of Congress.
Was that the disclosure thing?
That was, citizens' hearings for UFO disclosure.
That wasn't the same as the Stephen Greer one.
No, that was Stephen Greer was 2001. 2013, Stephen Bassett put on the UFO disclosure for citizens' hearings for UFO disclosure, where he paid these former members of Congress to hear witness testimonies and expert testimony.
Was there a lot of
people,
parallels between people's stories?
Yeah, well, these were researchers talking about. But Penniston touched this craft, and he said, I asked him after, what was it like, and how did it affect you? He said every night since 1980, he had to take a tranquilizer to go to bed. He was so freaked out. He was so traumatized by that experience. And I felt like,
traumatized.
Trauma is a big part of the abduction experience. I think maybe because I don't remember it that clearly, there was trauma involved there.
Right.
Whitley Strieber, in the book Communion, he didn't even remember these beings showing up in the middle of the night. And he talks about being traumatized. And people who are traumatized, they act a little...
Yeah, but doesn't that also suggest that maybe these are not, positive experiences?
It does suggest that, but people who've been able to deal with the trauma come around the other side and said, oh, that wasn't so bad. It's like going to the dentist.
Isn't that a little bit like Stockholm Syndrome or something?
It is.
Like finally you start to identify with your...
You love your kidnapper.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. It is like that. Read the book.
But I already love aliens. So
Beyond UFOs by Ray Hernandez. He does a survey of about 5,000 people who claim to be abducted, and most of them say they don't regret it because it was a kind of expanded experience.
Well,
for them.
in terms of all the people who do the hypnosis with the abductions... was it David Jacobson, the threat?
David Jacobs, yeah.
So David Jacobs. So he was, hypnotherapizing people who had abduction experiences, and he began to find they had a very consistent theme. That actually there were these, the sort of the gray aliens, the little ones, and they were, operating on people, removing eggs and sperm. Also, there were these like hybrid alien
Half
humans,
alien, half people.
and they would actually sometimes be brought back to the spaceship to kind of like help to teach the aliens. But because they're all telepathic, the alien children aren't trying to learn like mathematics or something. They're trying to learn feelings.
Yeah.
So they don't feel. They have
That's why they're taking our genetics, because they
trying
don't
to
know
learn
how
to feel?
But no, I think you're onto something.
That's so sweet.
Jacobs.
But just to finish, I mean, Jacobs also said a lot of these people talked about being shown films of a catastrophic end of the world, like nuclear explosions, extinction of humanity, and then they were shown the hybrid human aliens repopulating the Earth and walking hand in hand and
in harmony.
Yeah, exactly. So basically,
More evolved species.
Well, I don't know if it's more evolved because actually, if you look at the Greys, there's some very strange things about them. For instance, you would assume if it was like an ancient, more evolved civilization, it would have some culture, but there's nothing. I mean, they're very blank in a way.
Well,
they're
I wonder
more.
if that...
I mean, what I wrote about in the 2012 book, I think there's something more like sort of goblins or almost like parasites who exist on the edge of the psyche or something.
Well, some people say they evolved their pure intellect and bred emotion out of their genetic line, and they realize that's a dead end.
But that's also what Steiner talked about when he wrote Steiner when he talked about the goblins as super sensible beings. They were like beings of pure intellect.
He may have actually been encountering greys. I mean, and called them goblins because there was no term for that, I would say.
So if aliens don't experience emotion, that means they've never felt what love feels like?
That's right. That's why they need our genetics.
I'll show you, aliens.
But that's why they're breeding with us, creating this hybrid race that can feel and have this intellect.
Wow.
So that's my theory of why they're creating these little beings.
Well, the other theory is that because they're clones, they've been like cloning themselves for like millions of years.
Okay.
It's sort of like a Xerox machine. When you clone and clone and clone, it sort of loses its flavor and its characteristics, so that they've reached a point where, they're stagnating. Like they need an infusion of something else.
And that's human feeling, human emotion.
Could you imagine life without emotions?
Well, that's their life, but it's a dead end. You don't get to God if you want, by pure intellect. So they realize they hit a dead end, and they need what we have. And they do show pictures of cataclysmic destruction and environmental hazards, and maybe they're good, maybe they're
the other thing that Jacobs found is that sometimes the abductees were being trained to operate these ships, so that these big ships, like when the catastrophe comes, the idea is that the aliens are going to jump in and scoop up all these people who are like, what's that?
All the good ones.
It's so interesting. I don't think it's positive. I honestly think that I think
listen to a conversation that John Mack had with Bud Hopkins, and Bud Hopkins was more on the David Jacobs side, saying this is negative, and John Mack saying, I'm getting people with really positive experiences coming to me.
Well, that's where it seems to be something about the subjective field of the investigator brings back sort of a field of information.
Well, too, and you look at people who have had near-death experiences, people who have had near-death experiences that were brought up under like really strict religion, and they had guilt hoisted upon them since a very young age, and they believed that they were going to hell for whatever bullshit reason that they were told they were. And you tell a child that, they're going to be afraid of that their whole life. When they had near-death experiences, they envisioned these, like, it was negative. It was very negative because they imagined hell because that's what they expected.
And that's the same thing with these UFO investigators. If you're kind of a negative person, you're going to project or get those people to say, oh, yeah, it's negative, the hybrids are taking up. And you get someone like John Mack who says, no, it's a spiritual evolution that these people are having with their abductions.
Or David Jacobs would say that those people are misguided and they're not really looking at the actual, they're Pollyanna, they're not really looking at the actual evidence.
And John would say, you know what? It's a reflection of your consciousness. There's a great debate between the two of them where he brings this up. He said, well, I'm the psychologist. I'm looking at it really in a positive. And Bud's, the artist, and he's putting a negative spin on that. So maybe there is a self-aware projection we're putting on the phenomena in general.
Probably.
But I think in general, though, humans are kind of like, we're not the smartest tool in the shed.
We're the least evolved.
I wouldn't say the least, but and so we have to be a little bit... careful and discerning about, just like...
Maybe we are that smart, but the collective downgrading, dumbing down of the population has kept us back from our true gifts, from our true intelligence.
Well, who's dumbing us down? Some would say that's also part of the alien
culture
agenda.
Well, I think it is part of some agenda. Maybe it's the alien agenda. Maybe it's the negative alien agendas. Maybe there's a couple of different groups of aliens fighting it out behind the scenes.
Right, because there's no way there's just one kind of alien.
Yeah. Life is abundant out there.
Right.
So you're getting good aliens and bad aliens, or not bad, but the ones that are supporting the agenda to keep us stupid.
And how do you think they're getting here, since it takes so many millions of years to travel?
Oh, come on, you're not believing that story. You're not believing the gas doesn't. You think they're using Newtonian?
I'm just asking.
I say wormholes.
They are not exactly. They're not. We're functioning our world on Newtonian physics. That you put energy out, you get something back. That's 400 years old. You don't think they've evolved physics? This is what quantum wormholes. This is the Einstein-Rosen bridge.
Right.
Where if you have enough energy, you can bend time and space. This is what Einstein proved. And in my interview with Hal Puthoff, he said maybe these ETs are developing an energy system where they can bend time and space. So
They're
not
developing. They don't have it yet.
what
They don't have it yet. They're developing it.
Aliens need to learn
who
stuff,
knows
too.
what they really have. But they're not. If they're filling up their gas tank to get here from Alpha Centauri, it's going to take them a long time. But maybe there's another.
No, but I
type.
thought, what's his name? You mentioned the guy Bob Lazar. Like
Yeah.
he found they were using some form of like nuclear radiation, uranium or something like that.
No, but he also said they're using this anti-gravity wave thing that can actually generate the energy you need to bend time and space.
Which, when you look at all the videos that have been captured by the governments and stuff, the way that the crafts move is unlike any craft known to this planet.
Yeah, and if you
the
look
gravity
at
wave thing seems
if you
accurate.
look at Carolyn Corey's latest film, A Tear in the Sky, she did you see that one, Daniel?
No, I didn't hear
There's the tear in the sky is this little opening in the sky where these things start to pour in, probably from another dimension. So they have the ability to travel interdimensionally.
Right.
And that's even mentioned in some of the government documents that are coming out, the latest National Defense Authorization Act.
There's so many reputable people with stellar reputations, intellectuals. John Mack was at Harvard. I mean, he was skeptical at first, which if somebody's not skeptical at all, I'm like, I smell bullshit. I think skepticism is very important. I think
I'm
you should be
skeptical. I mean, people like there's this guy
how
Corey
you find the
Goode
truth.
who was coming out in the UFO scene.
Okay, so that's I wanted to ask you about that. That's good.
I
to bring
think
that up.
that guy is a total lunatic.
Yeah.
Why?
He
Is he
said
the one who talks about the bases under Mars?
he said he went into this room. He went to Mars for 17 years. He came back. He was regressed, and he didn't remember until he kind of had this flashback. There's so much junk out
But
there.
he got a lot of platforming from like Gaia and stuff like that. and
Yeah,
stuff with
Gaia
David Wilcock.
wants like David Wilcox put him out because they like sensationalism. He got a big name for himself, a big following, but I didn't believe a word of it. You have to be very
Do you
discerning.
think somebody like that might be also a kind of disinformation person?
That part of it, but I think he more wanted to be like famous and known for something and make money.
Knowledge is power, and he got greedy with it, maybe?
But there is a
making it up?
disinformation campaign. Like there was that case where this guy was onto a UFO, and this guy Richard Doty, the Richard Doty, made this guy look foolish, and it was a whole campaign to ridicule people. This is actually
Richard
from
Doty, I don't know about that.
This is actually from the Air Force itself, would ridicule people if they came out and said they had a UFO sighting.
When was that?
Well, the Doty case was in the 70s or 80s, but it's been going on since 1947. When the Roswell crash happened, front headline of the Roswell paper was saucer lands or crash in Roswell Ranch. And the next day he said, no.
It was a weather balloon.
Yeah, weather balloon.
A Chinese weather balloon.
Yes,
It wasn't a
spy
Chinese weather balloon then, but that's what they're doing now. They're kind of mixing it up now.
It's easy to confuse people, and fear is contagious.
Well,
it's
Mark
more
Twain's-
contagious than COVID.
Mark Twain said it's easier to lie to the people than to convince them they've been lied to. So
oh,
it's like
wow,
that.
that's a good quote.
I mean, that's
quote,
what's
Mark.
happening now. It's happening on all levels.
Yeah.
We won't get into what just happened in the last 2 years, but something.
Well, we should. I mean, we should in terms of UFOs. It's very interesting.
Well, I want to know what experience has stood out to you the most, that has been for you personally the most convincing thing of like, okay, there's something up.
Well, I mean, I think we talked about it a little bit in some of the earlier, but I mean, I did a lot of research on the crop circles and had a bunch of, sort of very interesting like psychic phenomena around it.
Who's doing those crop
synchronicities.
circles, the real ones?
I think it's another level of galactic intelligence.
Right. Why can't they show up in these ships too? If they're doing cross circles, which I think were messages, especially the Alton Barnes with the ET,
Although I also have friends who, I mean, it's and I wrote about this in the book. It's a very subtle phenomenon because I have friends who were, completely researching it, believed it 100%, and now I just wrote to one friend who'd written books on the geometry of them, and he's like, yeah, in the end, I think they're all human-made.
I don't think so.
Is that even possible, though?
so
if you look at
interesting.
the scope of them and the size of them
So
and how quickly they pop
I had
up.
many subjective experiences that convinced me at that time that it had to be in some way a real phenomenon.
What was your subjective experience? I just want to hear one.
I mean, even like the first one that I happened to go into, that was like 2001, I guess. And I was finishing my first book, Breaking Open the Head. And in that book, I'd written about kind of the mushroom cult in Christianity.
Right.
And the first one that I happened to go into where I met this guy who became actually the same guy I just mentioned, Alan Brown, who became my good buddy. he'd just been going down the road listening to a Terence McKenna tape, and then he saw this thing on the side of the road. But he was like a researcher in the field already. So we went into this thing, and it turned out it was a double mushroom pattern.
Oh,
and it was actually could be read as like the tree of life,
Oh.
like those
shape
early,
of the
early
crop
Christian
interesting.
images that were like, if you didn't know what it was, it would just be a tree of life. But if you knew that it was like a mushroom, so it encoded a lot of the same information that I just written about in my book that hadn't come out yet. So it really felt like it was like deliberately put in my path.
Yeah.
And then the
Right.
fact that I met Alan, who had just happened to be listening to Terence McKenna on the mushrooms before he saw the thing. But it was like over and over stuff like that. Like it was like a synchronicity
That happens with
vortex.
the UFO phenomenon
Yeah, I know,
too.
I
You're
know,
thinking
yeah.
about it, and something shows up, or someone says they saw something, or
I also had an experience where, because I was trying to understand, because there was that crop circle. Did you mention the one that came out that had like the gray aliens?
Yeah, the
Well,
one-
there was one that was the Arecibo.
yeah, the
response.
Arecibo response. Do you know
Yeah.
what Arecibo was?
No.
A message put out by Carl Sagan about where we were. He put out a radio telescope out into space, 1974. This crop circle comes back. What was it, in the 80s?
No, it was 2000.
2000 with the
Or
same.
it was 2001 actually.
It was
2000
same
strangely
sort
enough,
of.
2001.
It
yeah.
was the same sort of
Structure.
message.
It was like a schematic model that showed like the one we sent out had like a little human person, and then like our DNA code, and the the
So could it
elements
be
of
interpreted
organic
as
life.
communication?
That's what we
Yes.
sent to them, and what came back into the field
Ping and a ping.
showed like a smaller being with a bigger head, with an extra strand of DNA, and with silicon added.
How
to
do you
the-
do that on ground level, first of all, Daniel? How would you do that? If you're on the ground stomping down the weeds and just making this.
Well, I've never tried. I mean, according to my friend Alan, who was a complete staunch believer in the phenomenon, he made one, himself ultimately, and it was quite convincing.
But did he make a complex one?
Well, I mean, yeah, but then beyond the 2001 Arecibo response, the next year there was an extremely complex one that showed like a gray alien, like holding this computer disk that had a message in ASCII on the side that said something.
It says,
we
"Beware."
oppose,
Yeah.
beware. We oppose acts of cunning and craft.
Yeah.
Beware of the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises.
And you know what
They're talking about
ASCII
the government.
You know what
No,
ASCII
they were
code is?
talking about the gray aliens, actually.
Or they may have been talking about the government.
No, it's pretty clear.
Maybe the
they're talking
government
I
is
don't
gray
know.
Well,
We oppose
one of the
deception.
things-
was in
One of the things that I've learned about crop
Opponents
circles
hostis.
is a man-made crop circle. You look at the grain and it's broken.
Exactly.
But an alien crop circle, a legit one, it's bent.
It's bent, and there's
and there's
blown
chemicals.
nodes.
Yeah, well, there were these physicists who did a lot of research in the field, and
Took
they
soil samples,
published their
right?
papers in peer-reviewed journals. And yeah, it was more like an energy that hit the crops from above.
Right.
And
plasma
you would find
beam.
these like blown nodes and cavities that you wouldn't find if the thing was just pushed down.
So that's kind of undeniable.
Yeah.
You can't, there you go.
People get cynical if they don't get answers when they get older, when you're friends. But
Yeah.
it's so enthusiastic that the crop circles are real, at least some of them. Some
Yeah.
of them are fake, but that one...
But I was going to mention I had another experience. So I got very interested. I was researching all about after the Arecibo response and after the 2002 one, trying to understand the gray aliens. And I got interested in Dolores Cannon. I ended up hearing her speak.
Dolores.
Yeah, once again, I find her a little Pollyanna-ish about.
I do
about-
too.
Okay.
I do too.
Well, she seems a little like, I know everything.
I interviewed her, and I didn't buy a lot of what
Yeah.
she was saying.
Okay. That's
But
important to.
So as I began to get into the phenomenon, I began to have like weird, like edgy experiences, like
what?
like weird noises at night. Like I was in Berlin with my partner, and there was like this loud humming at night. And then one night I
Did
had
your partner hear it too, or just
no, I think she kind
You
of slipped.
started to crack open the head, Daniel.
you
One
broke it open?
night I had a dream, and in the dream I encountered like a group of aliens, and like an alien commander woman, and in the dream like she opened my mouth and she put her fingers in my mouth.
Oh, take me out to dinner first.
And then I did the same thing to her. I put my fingers in her
Oh,
mouth.
What
take
did that
her
do
out.
for you?
Wow.
I woke up from the dream, and I was totally wide awake because I'd been doing this
Mike's excited.
kind of this Tibetan dream yoga practice. So I was really studying my dreams. So I was waking up a lot, but very clear. And I woke up from the dream, and I was about to like actually write down the dream. And my partner, who was sound asleep, turned over to me in the bed, opened my mouth with one hand, and put her fingers in my mouth.
Shut
Wow.
the fuck up.
That
Did you
is-
ask her why?
I
Like what
I
compelled
woke
her?
her up.
Did she remember
She
it?
didn't remember it
Did
at
that
all.
have any effect on you consciously, alter your consciousness or something?
No, but it was just like I had a number of times where I felt just in my focus on the Greys, it was like I was bringing their energy fields closer, and I could hear it in like hummings, like a sense of like something
that's pretty
outside
good.
or
So
whatever.
that's evidence for me that we can't doubt our conscious awareness. So
Also, you have a dream about this very specific moment, and then your partner wakes up from a sleep coma, does the exact same motion, doesn't remember it. You can't.
you can't
There's
make.
so-
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty
That's
good.
opens the door.
The thing is that we all agree, but I mean, then you have the sort of people who are in the skeptical camp. Who
Right.
would just say they were tripping. He was taking a lot of psychedelics.
You could say a lot of things
Alan
to
was a
explain.
hippie,
Yeah, right.
in his van.
But it doesn't matter what people say.
But it is interesting also, though. It's like if you go to the conferences, like so the people who are kind of attracted to the phenomena are more kind of like the outsider,
out
weirdo
there.
characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you
They
go to
are.
like a business conference,
Yeah.
the Javits Center, or you go to like
It's a bunch of losers.
tech conference, it'll be like these very shiny like people with like a lot of like energy. It's like a different type
It's
of
a
energetic.
vibe. It is.
It's a vibe, but it's also kind of like an egoless vibe in a way. I'm sure there's a lot of
There's
people with the
ego
egos
there.
there. I'm sure.
There's-
But like the zanier people are more open-minded, you could argue.
Exactly. Those are people you're going to find at some of these conferences. But you get people like Richard Dolan, who very professional, really well researched, looked at government documents, and has said, look, there is a cover-up.
So Dolan was, where was he educated? I know he was,
he lives in Rochester now, but-
academic historian. I think maybe he went like Harvard or something. But I mean, he wrote a 2-volume book.
Yeah, it's UFOs and the National Security State.
UFOs in the National Security State.
Where he said, I'm just going to look at this UFO thing for like a couple of days. He's been sucked in for 20 years because the deeper
'Cause he
you look
found
into
shit.
the government cover-up, forget the aliens. What does the government know?
Yes.
It sucks you in because something's weird is happening in
You talk
time
about,
space.
or
Yes.
it was mentioned, Philip James Corso is a person
Yeah.
that's mentioned in this book, and I looked up this is from Wikipedia, so correct me if any of these are wrong. But I was just looking at like, okay, what if I had to introduce them to people who've never
Corso
heard?
is someone who was there looking at the Roswell crash
Right.
site and said a lot of the technology was reverse engineered from the Roswell crash,
Right.
and given to corporate America, like the
Corporate.
micro. Yeah, it was and that really belongs to the American people. That's a whole other story. But like the microprocessor was something
Right.
that he mentions in the day after Roswell. And people believe he was a Colonel Corso. He was a colonel.
And he had an interaction though, didn't he have communication?
He got a communication that Linda Moulton Howe and Whitley Strieber said from these alien, like telepathically.
Yeah.
And that communication was.
Oh, it was. Wait, I got it. He asked the aliens, "What can we gain from you?" And they said, "A new world if you can take it."
That's
but
right.
this wasn't it wasn't meant as a threat,
Well-
but rather a chance to shift the dynamic of human
Whitley
awareness.
and Linda both got that same story from Colonel Corso. If you can take it, Whitley Strieber wrote a book called A New World. If you can take it.
Whitley Strieber was an abductee.
An abductee. His book Communion gave us the face of the alien with the big eyes.
Okay.
1988 maybe it came out right around the
Great
time it
year.
was having. And then so he is probably the most lucid abductee I've met.
The most lucid.
Yes.
Interesting.
There's something.
But
yeah.
there's also something
Yeah.
odd about Whitley. I mean, I know him a bit
Well,
too.
he's
I mean, are we
from
not odd? We're
Texas,
kind
What's
of
that?
odd.
But I mean, I can't say that I entirely like. Sometimes it's just those stories are so incredibly bizarre and wild. And he was like a fantasy and science
go to
fiction
Burning Man.
writer.
And maybe I
before-
said to him he was a science and fantasy because that's how he dealt with his alien contact through science and fantasy.
Right.
He wrote
Or
the-
maybe he's just somebody who has such an active fantasy life that it like bleeds over into his.
Or maybe that's one way. Or maybe he's so open that he gets these realms of, like I was with him at this UFO conference in South Dakota, and he says, when I close my eyes, I see this whole other world. When I open it, it's gone. So I think he was tapping into this other dimensional reality.
Realities.
Like around where the ghost dancing happened.
Ghost dancing.
You know, the Wounded
What?
Knee, why that massacre occurred because the Sioux, the Lakota, were trying to ghost dance into another dimension. And they were shot before they could do the ghost dance.
Damn.
It was a massacre. And I think Whitley was tuning into that, this is just my perspective, that ghost dance reality, which is a doorway that opens to these other realms.
Also, Skinwalker Ranch is a very, very fascinating piece of land.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of documentaries, docuseries, videos on YouTube about it because once I heard about it, basically there is a lot of a lot of ghost phenomena and a lot of alien phenomena happening at the same time.
Right.
The government at one point owned it, and then a private
Then,
rich guy
Bigelow
bought it.
Robert Bigelow bought it, who was a big Las Vegas real estate, and he did the research with the government. That's why there's a book out called Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, where they track these orbs that show up. But I think it's a vortex.
Right.
I think it's a vortex to another dimensional reality where these strange creatures, these big, like, werewolves come through there. And
Whoa.
This is like, we do not understand what time and space. We don't understand dimensional reality.
I wonder if we should pause on that point, make this the end of a certain episode, and then we'll come right
Yeah.
back in and just keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
That sounds good. There's so much more to this conversation, but also to reality that we will never understand. And we're about to dive way deeper than what you've heard. And strap in, kids, because you're in for some tickling of your soul.